I do remember he kind of called a shot in the huddle. He was just like, hey, just give me a little bit of time. Give me a hole. I'll make it happen from there. And then the next run, he just popped it for a touchdown. I was like, damn, he really just called a shot in the Super Bowl. That's pretty awesome.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast. Please welcome your hosts, Patrick Allen and Matt Verderam.
Welcome in. It's the Arrowhead Addict podcast. And for the first time on YouTube, we are on YouTube, y'all. Arrowhead Addict podcast. Patrick Allen, joined as always by Matt Verderam. For better, for worse, you can see us now. How do you feel about this development, Verderam?
It's definitely for worse for the audience. For us, better. Yeah. For the audience, worse. I apologize. It is what it is. Blame God.
Couple of faces for radio. Here we are. We're really excited to be doing this. We want you all to run over to our YouTube channel. We'll have the link in the episode description. Subscribe on YouTube. You're probably already subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or all the places that you get our show. If you want to check us out in the flesh sometimes, head on over to YouTube and subscribe. We're going to be doing some podcasts right after Chiefs games or on the same day as Chiefs games. So you'll be able to tune in for potentially live podcasts in the future on YouTube. So you don't want to miss that. And we appreciate your support and all your reviews over on Apple Podcasts. We're going to get into the Chiefs talk now. And I'm afraid this is not what I was hoping to talk about right off the bat here, Verderam, but we got some bad news. Willie Gay is on IR. We knew that he had a toe issue, that he had a little bit of there was a report that he had maybe had a turf toe. Now he's out 3 weeks. What are you hearing on this?
Well, I think the initial hope was that this wouldn't be the case. But now he's on short-term IR. So for people freaking out, IR, it's a little bit different than it used to be. He can come back after 3 weeks. So this isn't a situation where he's out for 10 weeks or he's out for the whole season. He's out for a minimum of 3 weeks, which would mean he's going to miss games, though, against Cleveland, Baltimore, and the Chargers. So that matters. Now, who's going to replace him? Probably Ben Neiman. You might see some Nick Bolton, but Spagnuolo loves to go with guys that he trusts. He trusts Ben Neiman. I know Chiefs Kingdom loves that and is just thrilled to death, but yeah, it is what it is. So you're going to see some more Neiman now with Gay being sidelined. Hopefully the turf toe resolves itself here. That's a weird injury. That can be something that really can be week to week. That can be something that requires surgery. It just depends. Hopefully, obviously, for the Chiefs and for Willie Gay, it's the former.
And for those of you out there who might not be familiar, turf toe, it sounds like, your toe hurts. You're a professional football player. You're fine. But as Matt said, that's not it. It's a sprain. As we saw, that's what Mahomes was dealing with in the Super Bowl last year. Had to have surgery. He was in a walking boot for a number of weeks. Had to go through physical therapy. Was ahead of schedule. But hopefully it's not that bad for Willie Gay. Sometimes it's just minor. And oftentimes it's about pain management and playing through it. And we're at the beginning of the season here. I don't blame them for being cautious with Willie Gay. You need him at the end of the year. You don't need him necessarily right now.
Yeah, I think, look, with the Chiefs, it's all about being healthy for January, February. It just is. Look, they're not going to miss the playoffs because Willie Gay is on IR for 3 weeks. With all due respect to Willie Gay, they wouldn't miss the playoffs if Willie Gay didn't play one snap all season. They'll be okay. But he played really well this summer. I mean, by all accounts, by anybody who's to camp, and then you watch him in the preseason, his athleticism was what got him drafted in the second round. You saw that. He played great. He was fast. He was flying around. He looked a lot more comfortable in the system. I know when he came out talking to people within the organization, there was a lot of thought of, look, give this kid a year. He's raw, but he's really, really talented. And we saw that. You see what Kansas City saw in Gay. So listen, it's a bad break, but if it only ends up being 3 weeks or even a month, I think for the Chiefs, that's okay. That's fine. You'll take that and you'll be able to move on and not really worry and not lose so much sleep on it.
Yeah, they really could have used him against Cleveland. I mean, that's the game. Playing teams like Cleveland, playing teams like the Titans, which they'll get later in the year, you'd really like to have an athletic linebacker out there to try to deal with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and the change of pace that the Browns are going to be throwing at you, not to mention all the play action. So that's a bummer, but we know that the Chiefs have the horses in the stable to still get the job done without Willie Gay. So here's wishing him a speedy recovery, and keep your eyes on arrowheadaddict.com for updates on this. We know Matt Connor will be on top of all of that. Okay, And of course, follow Matt Verderam on Twitter at Matt Verderam. He will as well. Let's talk roster cuts. We've spent a few minutes on this. We haven't had a chance to talk to you guys since the roster cuts happened. We gave you our 53-man roster predictions. We were pretty close. I had maybe DeMarcus Robinson on the bubble. I was wrong about that, but we did have Darius Fountain and Jody Fortson making the team at tight end and wide receiver respectively. They both did, so we're geniuses. What's your reaction to this, Verderam? Were you very sure they were going to make it? Are you happy that they made it? And how do you think the two of these players will be used? Will they make an impact this year?
I think, to be fair, I think you actually had Fountain. I don't think I did. I had Fortson though. Look, I thought Fortson would make the team, because they ran a play, and in fact, they scored a touchdown on it against Minnesota, where they had 4 tight ends on the field, and it was in the first quarter. It was with the starters. The second I saw that play, I knew they were keeping 4 tight ends. You don't have that play. You don't run that play in the red zone in the preseason if you're not going to keep 4 tight ends. So, to me, Jody Fortson, at that moment, I knew he made the team. Fountain is an interesting guy. He's a former 5th-round pick in Indianapolis and bounced around. Obviously, now comes to Kansas. He's still young. He's 25 years old. He played his way onto the roster. If you watched it yesterday, Brett Veach had a press conference. He talked about that a little bit. He had to make the team. He just outplayed other people. And I think that for me, I always felt like, okay, you're going to have Hill, you're going to have Hardman, Robinson, and Pringle. After that, it was interesting. Kemp has been so good on special teams. You figured he'd probably find a way on the roster, and he did. Initially got cut, but it was kind of just procedural. He was always going to come back. Fountain deserved to make the team. Like I thought they'd keep Cornell Powell just because he became the first player that Veach drafted not to make the initial 53-man roster. So I thought Powell would get the nod, but Fountain outplayed him, pure and simple. And they kept Powell on the practice squad. That works out. But good story, good for him. I don't think Fountain's going to be out there having 1,000 yards this year, but you know what? Good on him for earning a job, and we'll see if he can continue to make the most of the opportunity.
Yeah, and you can't talk about Darius Fountain making the team without talking about Cornell Powell. And I think that folks like yourself, like you mentioned, that thought that maybe Fountain still, despite showing out in the preseason, wasn't going to make the team. I think the reasoning behind that was because the Chiefs drafted Cornell Powell in the 5th round out of Clemson. He's an impressive-looking guy. We heard a lot of good things coming out of training camp about him. But at the end of the day, and this is the point that I was making to a few people, was, hey, look, man, these guys are both 5th-round picks. And if you're Andy Reid and Brett Veach, look, man, if the 5th-round pick with a little bit more of NFL experience is outplaying the kid and you're as deep as the Chiefs are on offense, take the guy who can help you now. This is a team trying to win the Super Bowl right now. And if Fountain is ahead of where Powell is, hey, you took a chance on him. You get him on the practice squad. You hope he doesn't get poached away from you. But if they think that Fountain can contribute right now, this is absolutely the right move, rather than waiting a couple years for Powell to get where Fountain is right now. I think it was the smart play.
You're trying to win. You're trying to win a Super Bowl now, not in 3 years, not in 5 years. Trying to win now. Now, also, look, we get caught up in this stuff. Not you and I, but just in general, like. They're not winning or losing a Super Bowl because they chose Fountain over Powell. Like, if Darius Fountain's playing a ton, it's probably not a good thing for the team this year. To be real, okay? But if he's a better player than Cornell Powell, he should be on the team. That's how this stuff works. I don't care that they drafted Cornell Powell, and I liked him, by the way, as a pick out of Clemson. I thought he'd be an interesting young guy. He didn't play well enough. Fine. You put the best players on the field. We just watched in New England. We watched the Patriots cut Cam Newton. Nobody, anyone who says that they weren't surprised about it's an absolute stone cold liar. Nobody thought Cam Newton was getting cut. Cam Newton stunk last year, threw 8 touchdowns and 10 picks. I don't know whether or not the vaccination status played a role in it. That hasn't been said. I'm not here to debate that. But look, Belichick looked at his quarterbacks and said, Mac Jones is better. That's who's playing. I don't care. And that is what you should do at the NFL level. This isn't high school where you're trying to protect somebody's feelings who's a senior and you don't want him to get beat up by a freshman. Cornell Powell wasn't as good as Darius Fountain in the summer. The Chiefs are in the business of winning football games. Therefore, they made the right decision.
Bill Belichick doesn't strike me as a guy who's too concerned about the homecoming game.
No.
And the interesting thing about, last thing on Powell, is that the Chiefs liked him enough. They selected him before they selected Trey Smith, who's going to be their starting right guard this season and could be a I mean, it looks like he could be a potential Pro Bowl player down the line. That's how talented he is. So it says a lot about what Dries Fountain accomplished in camp. And I think it sends a nice message to all those guys at the bottom of the roster that you've got a chance if you come to camp with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Look, you play the best players. You roster the best players. And I think Kansas City showed that. I remember years ago when John Dorsey was the general manager and they cut Kavari Russell in training camp. He was a 3rd-round pick.
That's right.
You never see that, ever. I don't care if they drafted me in the 3rd round by accident. No, the teams never cut top 100 picks. They cut them. And you know what? They were right. They were right. I mean, now look, they still whiffed. They deserve, some criticism for whiffing on a 3rd-round pick. But they didn't sit there and waste everybody's time. And I think that is one criticism I have of a lot of teams in the league, most teams in the league. They are so desperate to look like they're right. They will sit there and just hold on to guys. Like, look, the Titans screwed up with Isaiah Wilson, right? The right tackle out of Georgia, who they took a year ago, who's now out of the league. That pick was a disaster from Jump Street. He was never, ever, ever contributing to that team in any way at all. I give the Titans credit for being like, you know what? Screw it. We messed up. We're not keeping him on the team. Now, Powell's a day 3 pick. Day 3 picks get cut all the time, especially on good teams. They just do. There's no shame in that. And he didn't even get, he's on the practice squad. He's still with the organization. If you're the Chiefs, who are your best, in this case, 6 receivers? If Cornell Powell's not one of them, he shouldn't be on the team. Yeah,
and that is exactly what happened. Last thing I want to talk about, but I meant to tease this at the beginning. I'm a little distracted by the fact that we're on camera now. Coming up in this show, in our next segment, we have a special guest. We mentioned it on the end of the podcast last week, but if you didn't listen, shame on you. We got Mitchell Schwartz. Me and you, Mitchell Schwartz, probably about 20 minutes, 25 minutes interview coming up. Some really interesting things we learned, and we're going to get to that right after the commercial break. But before, the last thing I wanted to touch on, because a lot of fans, this is a popular player, a talented player, but just got muscled out. Darwin Thompson was cut. And, not a terribly surprising thing considering how the Chiefs are deep at the running back position, deep on offense. Somebody's got to go. And he's been around for a while and hasn't really made any kind of monumental leap for the team. But what was interesting about the fact that he got cut was that he didn't re-sign with the Chiefs practice squad. He did sign with another team's practice squad, and that team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Does that concern you? A guy he's been with the Chiefs for a few years now. He knows the offense. He knows the playbook. They're only going to play Tampa Bay, if they get them to the Super Bowl. But does it bug you a little bit that he ended up in Tampa Bay? Or are you not worried?
No, I can't express how little I care that he's in Tampa Bay. Look, Tampa Bay kicked Kansas City's ass last year, and they didn't need Darwin Thompson to tell them the playbook. So if the Chiefs are going to play Tampa and beat them, it's not going to be because, hey, we kept state secrets on the wraps. Like, Andy Reid's going to have, if they play each other, Andy Reid will have 50 new plays by the time they get to that game. I don't care. I think for Darwin Thompson, in reality, he just probably felt like he needed a new start. He wasn't going to get playing time here. I mean, I think he's talented. I really do. But he never really seemed to quite get the confidence of the coaches. And you look at their running back depth chart. He's not playing over Edwards-Helaire. They clearly trust Darrell Williams more. Jerick McKinnon now comes in, and he's a guy who I think is going to be their pass blocking back, a guy who can catch the ball to the backfield, 3rd down back. And then Derek Gore looked pretty damn good in the preseason.
He did, yeah.
Like, Derek Gore looked like he could play. So if you're the Chiefs, I don't think you're all that broken up about the fact that Darwin Thompson's not there. And maybe give it to Thompson. You look at the Bucs and go, Leonard Fournette. I don't know. How long is he going to be there for? Ronald Jones. I got a better shot at cracking that room than I do Kansas City. He's probably right.
And if you saw, he gave an interview after he was talking about his JUCO coach and stuff. And if that's on Twitter, look for it. Seems like a really great kid. Seems like a really driven kid. Definitely pulling for him in his career. Just didn't work out with the Chiefs, and that's the way it ends up being for a lot of the guys. All right. So what we've got coming up, we're going to head into a quick break. On the other side, Mitchell Schwartz from a couple days ago. Excellent interview. Stay tuned for that. After that, there'll be a short break. And then we'll see you for our season preview and our predictions for the Kansas City Chiefs season coming up. That way, next week, we can focus on the first game against the Cleveland Browns. So we'll have a fact or fiction section, and we'll let you know how many games the Chiefs are going to win, and if we think they're going to make it back to the Super Bowl, and if they're going to win it. All right, let's get to Mitchell Schwartz. We'll be right back.
We want to now welcome in Mitchell Schwartz to the podcast. Of course, everybody knows Mitch played a long time in the NFL, a decade between Cleveland and Kansas City. And, Mitch, I don't know whether to say former NFL player, current NFL player. I know obviously you had the back injury, you had the surgery on it. I guess start there. Just, are you still looking at playing? Or are you kind of saying, you know what, I'm good, I've done what I wanted to do in my career? I mean, where does that stand for you?
Yeah, I'd say it's still a current NFL player. I'm in the last stages of recovery here and, hoping to kind of get over this final hump. It's taken a little longer than I would have liked or we would have liked. But once I'm, 100% fully ready to go, I think I can, make that decision and figure out what's next for me. But honestly, I don't know if you've ever had back pain or for people that do, it's not too fun and not too comfortable day to day. So until I can, get back to feeling the way I felt for the last 9 years and playing the kind of ball I know I can play, it's kind of a moot point. So like I said, just kind of looking to finish up this last phase of recovery and then from there figure it out. But I haven't, closed any doors, haven't, officially done anything, and really just waiting for that health to kind of fully get back to where I was.
I feel for you. I'm currently on a steroid for my back, and I'm guessing that I'm not anywhere near in the pain that you were, considering you have to deal with 300-pound guys bull rushing you. So, on that front, I'm actually curious. And you got hurt in October last year, and it kind of became a week-to-week thing. At what point did you kind of realize, look, I'm not going to be able to come back this season? This is going to be something that's going to be a little bit more longer term than a week-to-week or even a month-to-month deal.
Yeah, we really thought, originally I did not go on the 3-week IR. We thought it could be something as quick as, 2 weeks. I think we were playing Carolina was the third game I missed. It was right before the bye. So you could have thought, it's easy to put Mitch on, the 3-week IR, kind of get that fourth week of the bye, come back. But we really thought there could be a chance. We didn't realize it would take this long, let alone, needing to get surgery. I think, that's kind of why it took that long to get surgery, because we were exhausting all options until, you kind of do that as the last resort. You don't cut into your body if you don't need to. So we definitely thought there's a chance it could be quicker. With back stuff and with nerves especially, there's no really timetable that's, it's not like a high ankle sprains, 4 to 6 weeks, or MCL, certain grade is this and certain grade is that. You just never quite know. Every, back and body and nerve is different. So unfortunately, there's not, a specific timetable that we could stick to, or even right now we are sticking to. But we thought, because it didn't come on as like one, oh man, I just heard it right there moment. So we thought maybe it was, an alignment issue, or something was out of place, or maybe just, symptomatic for the moment, but could go away. And, obviously the more I worked at it, it wasn't subsiding, and, kind of got frustrating there.
Spinning it forward now, preseason is about to end, got a couple more days of it. And I'm curious, as a current player, what are your thoughts on some coaches like Andy Reid will play guys for a half? Hey, we're gonna play the starters for a full half, at least, deep in the second quarter. Then there are other coaches, Sean McVay being one. Hey, we're not going to play our guys at all. We're not going to play any starters. We're just going to analyze some of the backups, some of the depth on the team. As someone who's been a starter for a long time, which way of it were you more of a fan of? Hey, I'd rather just sit here and watch the guys and enjoy a couple weeks off, or no, I got to knock off some rust. I've got to get 3 or 4 series.
Well, I never got to experience preseason gameless preseason. I was always playing in games. I will say, preseason game 4 was always a good one as a starter. That was typically the week you got off. And, at that point, you kind of feel like you've, almost earned that week off. And, I've had years where I've had to play in that game a little bit. But, coach obviously loves to play his guys throughout the preseason. I think, last week we were all kind of looking at Pat and thinking, oh, maybe he's going to take him out. And, he left him in a little longer than maybe we thought. So coach likes to do it. It also seems like every year at the end of September, we're 4-0, 5-0. So there's definitely a method to his madness. For me, preseason games are interesting because I felt like I always performed worse in a weird way because, preseason game one, essentially you get the game plan like 2 days before the game. So, one year we played the Texans and, you're pretty much worried about JJ Watt, and that's the guy you're going against, especially as the right tackle and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, he's not dressing. So now you're going against this rookie and you don't really have too much tape on him. If you do, you got to go watch it from college. You're not sure what defense they're going to be in. There's a new coordinator and you're not sure of the fronts and the rotation and this and that. And so for me, I'm a big preparation guy. And so that lack of preparation, I always thought kind of made me a little bit hesitant and a little bit not quite as confident as I like to be going into a game. And then again, you're also not spending the whole week kind of going towards that one goal of beating that team. Right. You're still, for the most part, in training camp mode. So the combination of those two, I felt like I didn't play the best in the preseason, but I still appreciated the work because you really just can't simulate that. I mean, you can go against Frank Clark, you can go against Chris Jones, but practice is just different. I mean, it just is. You want to go against those guys to kind of get the speed of what it's going to feel like, but games are different. And so, I think coach does a pretty good job of, not exposing us too long, but getting us out there and giving us the right amount of work. But obviously guys, this kind of Sean McVay tree, at the end of the day, they want all their guys for all 17 games. And, they're not willing to kind of risk that. I do think it's a little bit funny. We talk about us as pro athletes needing, especially professional football players, needing these 3 preseason games to get into, kind of the speed of the game. And then these 18, 19, 20-year-old college kids don't have any preseason games. And just first game, it's Alabama against Miami, and they're going full speed. And no one really complains that it looks floppy or that they're not, ready for game tempo. So I do think that's a little bit of a contradiction when they, first couple weeks of the year complain that, it looks sloppy and not enough guys are playing preseason, but these college kids can just, hit the ground running.
For you, obviously, like you said, many, many years as a starter in the league, never missed a snap really up until that one game in Tennessee there for a brief period, and you're back. And then obviously, of course, last year. But, the season's now longer. At least the regular season is now longer. And for many teams, of course, you go into the playoffs. Now you're playing really essentially from late July when you get into camp all the way through Valentine's Day if you get to the Super Bowl. How much extra of a toll do you think it takes playing that extra one regular season game? Do you think it's as important, as hard on the body as maybe some make it out to be? Do you think it's really not that big of a deal? I'm playing 16, I can play 17. Where do you sit on that with the league now going to 17, I'm sure soon going to 18?
Yeah, I think it definitely adds an element that you don't really want to deal with. I mean, when the schedule used to come out, so you had your 16 games in 17 weeks, kind of the perfect schedule was a Thursday game or a bye right around week 5 or 6, and then a Thursday game or a bye right around week 11 or 12. So you kind of have, a 5 or 6 game chunk, 5 or 6 game chunk, 5 or 6 game chunk, and you could space it out. Most coaches give you kind of a mini bye after the Thursday game, and for the most part, you're not practicing too hard anyway. I personally always love Thursday games for those reasons. I know people don't like them, but as a player, all right, we're going to practice less and you're going to give me 4 days off on the back end. Sign me up for that. So I think it's just adding, maybe before you had a 7 or 8 game stretch of, continuous games without kind of that little mini bye. And now all of a sudden it's a 9 game stretch or a 10 game stretch. And that can really add up. It definitely, I almost want to say more mentally than physically, Coach does a good job, of course, taking care of his players, and a lot of the coaches around the league, they're really tapped into kind of the sports science aspect of knowing, coming off a Monday game, maybe we need to, pare back Wednesday practice. We can't go full go. We landed, Tuesday at 6 a.m. after playing in New England, and, the next day is a padded practice. You're probably not going to go quite as crazy that Wednesday, but it definitely adds up. There's, like I said, that mental stress and strain of having to be on every single week and not really allowing your mind to let loose. I think that might end up manifesting physically and being a little bit more challenging.
Now, to kind of move into your portion of your career at the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm interested in a few more minutes here with Mitch Schwartz, former All-Pro offensive tackle. You got there in 2016. You, of course, were in Cleveland for a few years. Obviously not a whole lot of team success in Cleveland, not only during your tenure, but about 25 years running. You end up signing with Kansas City. I'm just curious, that whole process for you, what was it like? Like, were you always like, okay, I'm going to go to Kansas City. That's where I want to go. Obviously, your brother Jeff played there for a year, played under Andy Reid his first year there. Did you almost re-sign with Cleveland? What was that process like to get you to end up inking that deal with KC?
Yeah, it was an interesting process for sure. I wanted to stay in Cleveland. I mean, you kind of get used to where you are. You like the area. My girlfriend at the time, she was from Cleveland. I met her there. I got to play with Joe Thomas, Alex Mack, John Greco, Joe Platonio. We had a pretty awesome line room. Those guys are lifelong friends, and, we still talk a bunch. And so, for me, obviously we didn't have the team success, but, every day I was going and I was hanging out with my friends and we had a good time. And, you're kind of always optimistic and you think, the team's going to have more success than you end up doing. And so I wasn't necessarily feeling like, oh, I need to get away. I need to go somewhere else. Kind of that quality of life day to day, like I said, was there for me. I liked every day of showing up and hanging out with those guys. But, a lot of people told me you probably want to get out of there if you can. It's just not run the right way. And, the grass actually is greener in this instance. And so, my free agency played out a little interestingly. We weren't quite getting the offers we thought we would. We were still negotiating with Cleveland. Woke up the next morning and all of a sudden Cleveland said, the deal wasn't there anymore. So that was off the table. That was an interesting little nugget. And from there, we just kind of kept talking to, other teams, and the Kansas City thing came about, relatively quickly. There was mutual interest there. I knew about the coaching staff from my brother. I knew he had a great time, still Coach Reed, Coach Heck, knew about the city, all those things. So, that came together fast. And once, we were actually able to officially talk to them and talk numbers and, get into the free agent portion. It was awesome. And, as a prospective free agent, you're kind of looking at teams and seeing, who's available and, what spots would be. And so, I knew I think that was the same year Donald left, and, I knew they'd kind of have a void there, although they had just signed Jaw to that little extension. So I wasn't quite sure if that was really going to be a team. And then, once the window opened, we were able to talk to them, it became apparent that there's mutual interest. And then, obviously it's been a good 5 years, and definitely the right decision.
You get to Kansas City, a couple of successful years with Alex Smith as a starting quarterback. And then, of course, Mahomes takes over in 2018. And I feel like there's no point in asking about, hey, when did you know Mahomes was great? Or when did you know? Because, he's turned out to be great. We've heard all the stories about when he was even running the practice team and how well he played in practice. I'm curious, like behind the scenes, when you're in the locker room, when you're shooting the breeze, whatever the case may be, you're at a Wednesday practice during the season, like give me something on who Patrick Mahomes is, either just something funny or just kind of an insight into who he is. And maybe, if you're a fan, you're not seeing that every day.
Well, I think the coolest part of who he is that what you see as a fan is who he is. He's literally that same guy every single day. He's genuine, his locker's right there in the middle of the locker room. Everyone can go up to him and hang out and, like you said, shoot the breeze, chat, do whatever. It's not like, oh, the MVP's over there in his corner, don't bother him. He wants to be around everybody. He's got that youthful energy, that enthusiasm. We see it on social media. We see it, on the field, and really in any chance we get to kind of watch him from the fan perspective of, how engaging he seems. He's chatting up with everybody. And so there's just no distance between him and really anyone on the team. I think that's the coolest thing about him is, kind of same with Trav, same with Tyron, all these guys, the culture that the Chiefs have built, it's with good people. It's with people who, aren't going to put down someone who, theoretically is beneath them in standing or stature. It's just a really good group of people. And, Pat at the top really exemplifies that. And so, every day, you can go up to him and, he knows all the sports. And so, hey, did you see what Luka did last night? And he's already spitting out the stats because he's already seen it. Or, hey, did you see this, the college baseball, semifinal? And he's seen that. It's pretty crazy. So you're not really going to bring him any new sports information. I think he kind of knows the back channels anyway. So I'm sure he's well aware of when the big stuff's going to happen.
Bigger win for Patrick Mahomes, the Super Bowl, buying a baseball team, buying a soccer team, or bringing Whataburger to Kansas City?
Oh, wow. I'd say my guess is his stake in the two teams isn't, extensive. So I'm going to put those two to the side. Between Whataburger and the Super Bowl, I'd say the Super Bowl probably unlocked Whataburger. So the Super Bowl was the key that drove that engine. but no, I mean, we all know it's the Super Bowl. It's the thing that, honestly, all of us on the team, I mean, that's what we're gonna be remembered for. You hear the stories from the team from 50 years ago, and they're still living there, and it's just, they're so revered, and the city loves it. And I think it was, pretty special to be, part of that first one. And obviously we're hoping for a lot more.
It was my cheap way of segueing into the Super Bowl, because that game, I remember covering from the press box, and when Mahomes throws that second pick in the fourth quarter, it's 20-10. Things did not go particularly well. The Niners, of course, have a great defense that you guys are going up against. And just walk me through from a player's perspective, from when he throws that pick until Damian Williams runs into the end zone for that final score. What is the emotion like for you? I mean, I get it. As a player, you're never going to walk off the field and go, well, we lost the game. It's it. I mean, you're never going to feel that way. But I've got to imagine, just from a human perspective, 2010, ball bounces off Tyreek's hands, a little behind him, gets picked. I can't imagine that at that point you're very high emotionally with about 11 minutes to go in the game.
Well, I'd say most of the people that play with me would tell you my emotional level is pretty much flatline. So I'm not going to be too high or too low. I do remember sitting on the bench thinking, man, it would suck to have come this far and to play all these extra games and all this extra practice and not walk away with it. But it wasn't in any sort of like negative way where I expected us to lose or thought we would. That team, I mean, we all obviously had the trust and the confidence and the belief that we were able to, turn any deficit into a victory. And so I didn't realize how dire it was until I watched the game. I actually didn't watch it until like 2 or 3 months later with a couple friends. We were sitting there watching, and we're kind of going through it, and we threw that pick, and there were like 8.5 minutes left, and we're going against the second best offense and a really good team, running team, a team you assume is going to kind of run the clock out on you. I know that year the criticism of our team was probably the run defense as well. And so, watching it from that fan perspective a few months later, and the commentators just saying, oh, San Francisco's got the ball and they can milk the clock, all this stuff. At that point I realized, man, it kind of was dire. From the player perspective, I never realized that in a moment. I didn't think, oh man, we're really, letting this slip away. We're losing our chance. It's just, you don't think like that. You don't realize that. Kind of one of those cool kind of game flow things that it just doesn't really cross your mind. You're just waiting for the next time you're going to take the field. And then obviously from that point we knew, every time we got it, we really had to score. But in the moment, didn't realize it. It just seemed like another game. Fortunately or unfortunately, we had gotten used to coming back from those kind of deficits. And then, watching it a couple months later, it is kind of crazy what we were able to accomplish.
When you look back on that game, and I'm sure now that you're a year and a half removed from it, you've had the opportunity to do it. Was Wasp the biggest play, or in your mind, was there another play that game that was bigger? Because Wasp gets all the attention, right? It's 3rd and 15, so deep ball down the field, 2 superstars involved in it. But there were a lot of plays in that game, especially the last 5-10 minutes. It really kind of drove that comeback. When you think back on that game, is there maybe an underrated play or an underrated moment that you look back and you know what? That's a huge reason why we won that game.
I don't think so. I think it is as, kind of special and revered as it has become. That really is the play that kind of jump-started that drive. I'm not a big momentum guy, but, it did kind of start the flow of energy there and really carried it to our defense and then back to our offense. The one play that I wish was different was the 4th and 1, the, Casey shuffle play. We got like 6 inches away from scoring the touchdown on that. I think it would have been awesome to not only have converted the 4th down, but to score the touchdown. And like, that's the play that they're showing for all the touchdowns. So I wish we were able to get the touchdown on that one. But no, I think the Wasp play is the play that, kickstarted the drive. Before the drive, we took the lead. And then obviously Damian's run at the end there. I do remember he kind of called a shot in the huddle. He was just like, hey, just give me a little bit of time. Give me a hole. I'll make it happen from there. And then the next run, he just popped it for a touchdown. I was like, damn, he really just called a shot in the Super Bowl. That's pretty awesome.
That's 2 more questions here. Mitch Schwartz, all-pro right tackle. Mitch, I've got to ask you the last thing about that Super Bowl. We were just talking about the Rose Bowl right parade. How nervous are you on that play in the sense you've never run this play before? It's on the biggest stage there could possibly be. You've got guys spinning around in the backfield, the running back's taking a snap. And it not only have you guys not run it, the play's literally not been run in like 70 years. Like, if this thing goes bad, it's got a potential to go really bad. And people to go, what the hell are they doing? Why would you run that? How nervous are you since it's a play you've not run and it's not one of your bread and butter plays, especially in that moment?
You are nervous because, again, that gets back to like not knowing what the defense is going to do. It's an unbalanced formation. It's obviously a crazy looking thing. We're moving and we're shuffling, and the O-line's doing a little shuffle as well. So you just don't know what the defense is going to present you. And then I had my right guard was pulling, so theoretically I could have had to block as far down as like 2 gaps over, and then Fish is on the other side, and I got to figure out where he's going, and we got to coordinate all those things. And let alone if the defense lines up in the static thing, and if they line up and realize it's unbalanced and where they're going to shift to and all these things. So yeah, it's a little bit nerve wracking. At the end of the day, you just got to kind of trust your gut, trust your football sense. And I mean, dude, we worked on that thing since like May of that year. So we had a lot of practice at it. He was holding in his back pocket for the right moment. Of course, coach always knows when these things are going to work. It seems like they always do. He kind of just holds them for that right moment. And like I said, I wish it was a touchdown, but it was still a pretty good 3.5-yard gain on a really big conversion. I mean, early in the game, being able to convert a 4th down, keep a drive going, end up, scoring I think we scored a touchdown a couple of plays later. Definitely the right way to start the game.
Well, speaking of the line play, obviously the big story for the offseason for the Chiefs was the revamping of the offensive line. Now we've gotten to see them in action for a couple of games in the preseason here. Obviously, there's no better expert to look at that play than you. What have you seen from those guys from that new line so far this preseason, and what do you think Chiefs fans can expect from that line as they head into the year?
I think it looks really good. It's only been a couple games. Obviously the Niners didn't play, kind of their first fleet, but they've looked good. I mean, they're doing like little things that you don't necessarily expect, rookies to do. Obviously I feel like more focused on center, right guard, right tackle, just because those are, the unknown quantities. I know everyone's kind of wondering how Orlando's going to look in this offense, and Tooney kind of just is almost the kind of guy you forget about, and he's just going to be solid over there. But yeah, you're seeing all these little things that you don't really expect rookies to do, and let it happen at that speed, at that level, that fast. Creed is really strong. He's a big dude for a center, a lot of strength, but there's times he's able to feel those zones and kind of bump back and help a guard, or help out on his own and climb to the backer. And we all know Trey is just wants to beat the crap out of you, and so that's an awesome tone setter to have. And he's also done some really good things with his technique as well. It's not just that he's out there mauling and throwing guys. He hasn't gotten any penalties. They might have been able to throw one in that first game, but he hasn't gotten any so far, and it looks really good from him. And then I think Lucas has done an awesome job. I'm really impressed with his balance, his sets. He's a big dude as well, and so he can play a little bit higher. I don't want to say higher because he's in a really good body position. It just looks higher. His chest is a little more elevated. But when you're a big man like that, he's good with his hands. He's got really good leverage. You're able to absorb a little bit more bull rush than us quote unquote skinny folks at 315, 320. Probably even 325. I'm sure he's, pushing the north side of 330 there, but it's good weight. He carries it well. He looks really good out in space, on his pass sets. So yeah, I'm really encouraged by it. I know there's going to be growing pains. There's going to be games where, maybe things aren't going quite as well. A defense is doing something different they're not used to. Something's kind of happening. There's going to be a week where Pat just kind of has to do it. There's going to be a week where, Clyde's got to step up, or, the receivers or Trav or whoever. But, I think it's going to look pretty good out of the gate, and then just going to keep getting better from there. So yeah, I'm obviously pretty positive about it, and I haven't really seen anything that's worrisome so far. And I think expectation wise, the fans, we got to remember these are rookies. 3 out of the 5 are rookies, and the other 2 are new to the offense. And so however it looks in the first month or two, I think it's only going to keep getting better from there. And aside from Orlando, you've got pretty much cost-controlled talent at the other 4 spots for 4 or 5 years in Vinny's case, and I think that's exciting thing for Chiefs Kingdom.
Last thing I got to ask you, because I remember writing about it when Tooney signs, it's $80 million. It's a record deal for an interior lineman, and you share an agent with Joe Tooney, and Mike McCartney was nice enough to sit down with me and kind of walk through the entire process, and he made it a point to say, one of the things that really helped the whole process along was Mitch talking to Joe and saying, hey, this is my experience in Kansas City. This is how it went. And that played a big factor. And I'm just curious, what was that conversation like? What was that feedback like? 5 years in KC and obviously a ton of success personally, and both, as a team as well. What did you relay to Joe while he's trying to make that decision?
Just, I think how much he's going to like it there. It's one of those things that from the offensive line perspective, I'm able to kind of give him the feedback of not only, what does practice look like? What are meetings like? But what's Coach Heck like? How is he going to coach you? What's the mood going to be? What's training camp like? How are the dorms? All these kind of little things that you can really lay out. Obviously I've been in the league a while, so I kind of know how things run in New England, and, I'm able to kind of compare and contrast that a little bit for him. And, I think in his case, his first 3 years, he was in the Super Bowl all 3 years, something crazy like that. I think his 4 years, he hasn't missed a snap either. And so, he's used to winning. He's used to having success. Obviously, I think we do things a little differently than New England does. And so I was able to, kind of share those and tell him he might have, a little bit more fun day to day. And, just sharing it, it's just information. Obviously, I wanted him to come here, and I think it's, good for the team and good for the organization, but, kind of be a disservice if I was being dishonest or lying to him about it. And so it's very truthful. It's just, hey, these are the experiences. I think you'll like these things. Maybe these are a couple things that might be different that you might not like, but just giving him the total picture and then just allowing him to say, hey, what do you think of this? Or just be there for him if he had any kind of little questions here and there.
Well, Mitch, I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for hopping on, joining us. It's been great to talk to you, great to catch up. I hope the back continues to heal up for you. And who knows, maybe see you on the field at some point later this year. Don't know. See how it goes. Hopefully it goes well.
Yeah, we shall see. I appreciate you guys having me on. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mitch.
Well, I got to tell you, Verderam, that was awesome. I know you're friendly with Mitch. You reached out. He agreed to join us. It was great to hear from him. We've all been concerned about him. We'd love obviously to see him back out on the field, but it was cool to get his input on what the Chiefs have done this offseason. And that thing about Damian Wilson calling a shot in the Super Bowl, I didn't know that. That was awesome.
Well, Damian Williams, if Damian Wilson did it, that would have been something really special. Wilson.
Yeah, that would have been really incredible.
That being said,
how many Damians on this team?
Yeah, they really a lot of D. Williams over the years as well. But in any event, no, listen, absolutely, that was great of Mitch to join us. I appreciate it. As you mentioned, I had reached out and he was more than happy to come on and take some time, and hoping for the best in his back recovery. And we'll see if he plays again and where he plays. Who knows? But very interesting stuff. Bullish on the offensive line. And what I appreciate about Mitch is, he tweets out constantly during the game. So first of all, if you're on Twitter, you should follow him. He's a tremendous follow. And second of all, he's really invested in watching, and he has really great insights, and not just to the Chiefs, but to the league. But I got to say, yes, my favorite part was absolutely the Damon Williams nugget. I'm going to score. He came within about 6 inches, but he got a huge first down that scored in the next play, and the rest, of course, is history. But yeah, thanks. Kudos to Mitch. Great job, and love to have him on. Hopefully have him on here again throughout the rest of the season.
Just real quick before we go, did you see that tweet he tweeted about Kirk Cousins?
It was a drive-by episode, yes.
What did he say? It was during a preseason game. Kirk,
it was against Kansas City.
Yeah.
He threw short on like third and some ridiculous thing, like 3rd and 22 or something. And he was like, well, I see Kirk Cousins is in midseason form.
I think that was after we talked to him, right?
And it was.
Yeah.
And the funny thing, it was at night. It was at night. And the funny thing is, I don't want to get Mitch in trouble here, but I know he knows this, of course. They share an agent. So that I was like kind of really surprised, but it was funny, and I'm sure it was all in good humor. But yeah, he really took a pretty good shot at Kirk there during a preseason game.
You see in the interview, he's a mild-mannered, kind of soft-spoken guy, and really measured. So it's fun to hear a little bit a little troll from Mitch on a guy I'm sure he's very friendly with. All right, we're going to take our last break of the episode. On the way back, we've got our season preview and predictions for the Kansas City Chiefs. We got some fact or fiction, and we're going to tell you if we think the Chiefs are going to win their second Super Bowl in 3 years. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. It's the Arrowhead Addict podcast. Patrick Allen, Matt Verderam. Verderam, let's preview this season. Now, when the schedule came out, we did some deep dives. I thought a lot about how can we preview the season? What's the best way to do this? And I think rather than go game by game, because let's be honest, we're going to do that with everybody all season long.
Right.
And we know what the expectations are, right? Well, we're not talking about a team that is, what can we expect from the Dolphins this season? There's a lot to talk about, right? This is the Kansas City Chiefs. We all know what the deal is. They're expected to win 13, 14, 15, 16, some people think 17 games and challenge for the Super Bowl. That's it. That's the preview. That's what the goals are for. But how is it going to play out? Who's important? What's going to happen? So we're going to do a little fact or fiction and get our opinions on a couple of different topics that fans might be interested in. And then we'll let you know about all that Super Bowl stuff that I'm sure you have way down on your priority list. So the Cleveland Browns, fact or fiction. I'm going to start with this one, and I'm going to have you go first, Verderam. The Cleveland Browns are the biggest threat to the Chiefs and the AFC. Fact or fiction?
Fiction. I think they're a threat. I don't think they're a bigger threat than Buffalo. Buffalo got to the AFC Championship game last year. The Bills were really good. They went 13-3. Josh Allen, second team All-Pro, right along with Mahomes. I think the Bills are really well coached, as do I think the same about the Browns, by the way. But really well coached, very well run. I think the biggest difference between Buffalo and Cleveland, I actually think Cleveland's roster, 1 through 53, you could make an argument it's the best roster in football. I don't know that I would make that argument, but you could make it. But Buffalo has the much better quarterback. And I always believe when you get into these games in January, even sometimes in December, depending on what's around you, you live and die with the quarterback. Way more than you do in September, October. Well, Kansas City's going to win with scheme early in the year. Even if they didn't have great talent, they just would because Reed comes up with all these things that nobody figures out for 5 weeks. When you get to December and January and February, there's no secrets anymore. And I just look at Buffalo and I say Josh Allen is the much better quarterback. I think Baker is above average, but I don't think he can go. I don't think he can go to Arrowhead and sling it with Mahomes in January. Now, maybe in week 1, we'll get that game next week. Like maybe that's a different deal. Come out, things kind of settling in. I don't think in January Mayfield's going in there and winning the game. Where to be fair to Allen, I think it's more possible. I think Allen would have a shot to do it.
I'm going to go with fact. And I thought a lot about this one. And I'm from the Cleveland area, so I'm a little partial to the Browns. But I watch all of their games. And I'll give you my reasoning. One, and I agree with you, they've got the better quarterback. And Cleveland's got the better team. The reason why I think the Browns are going to be better this year than last year, and I think the Bills are going to be a little worse. I think we're going to see a little bit. Look, the stat nerds have got to me. Josh Allen is a prime regression candidate to regress to the mean a little bit. He had a great season, but they still can't run the football. I'm not confident that they can run the football, and that makes them one-dimensional, and that makes it easier for teams like the Chiefs to break down Josh Allen and cause problems for him in these big games that matter. And when he's got to sit back there, they harassed him, they caused all kinds of problems, and the Chiefs' pass rush is better. The Browns, on the other hand, I actually think Baker Mayfield is going to be better this year because I think he's you got to remember last year, first year under Kevin Stefanski, brand new offense. COVID happened. They didn't get full training camps. They didn't get as much practice time as they needed. They lose Odell Beckham Jr. early. So they really had to lean on their run game and the play action, and Baker was shaky at first. So I think as we go deeper into the season here, Austin Hooper, who we know is a talented player from his time in Atlanta, wasn't really an impact for them. I think this year they get Odell Beckham Jr. back. They get the play action going. They get Austin Hooper more involved in the offense. You've got Kareem Hunt. You've got Nick Chubb. Baker plays a little bit better. And the defense, the Achilles heel for the Browns last year was their defense was terrible. They really re-upped there. They got in some new players. They're looking strong. Second year in the system, I think they make the leap. And I also, this is my dark horse, I think the New England Patriots are going to make the playoffs, and I think they're going to give the Buffalo Bills problems. I believe in Bill Belichick. Okay. I think he's got his quarterback. They spent a ton of money in free agency. So if the Browns definitely have a tougher road in the AFC North, having to deal with the Steelers and Mike Tomlin and the Ravens. But I think New England comes up. Maybe they expose Buffalo a little bit. So I'm going to go with the Browns. I think they're the team that get into a situation where their defense starts playing better, they start running the football, they got Myles Garrett, I could see them causing some problems for the Chiefs. So I'm going to go with Cleveland.
Okay. And by the way, I like to pick a New England. I originally, when I picked like every game at the end of the schedule release, I picked Miami to make the playoffs and New England to miss close, but to miss close. I actually now would reverse that. After seeing how incredibly unsure Miami is of Tua, and they can deny it all they want, the fact that they're interested still in Deshaun Watson, still after all this, tells me all I need to know about what they think of Tua. And with Belichick cutting Cam Newton to play Mac Jones, tells me all I need to know about what New England thinks of Mac Jones. So I actually agree. I think they are a playoff team. And I think with Belichick, you don't ever want to see that team in a playoff game. Ever. I don't care who his quarterback is, lack of weapons. He's got a very good defense. They got a very good offensive line. And Belichick just knows how to screw with people. So I agree. They're a tough team.
Let's get on to our next topic here, which is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So fact or fiction, Verderam. Clyde Edwards-Helaire will have 1,500 all-purpose yards in the regular season.
1,500. Now, it's an extra game. So essentially, it's a little less than 100 a game. You know what? I'll say fact for one reason. I think their offensive line is so much better that I think he's going to rush for well over 1,000 yards. I do. I've seen, you see if you go on whatever if you gamble Bovada or WinBet or bet you whatever, it doesn't matter, right? DraftKings fan, you see the props of who's going to throw for the most yards this year. Mahomes is an overwhelming favorite. Now, this is not an anti-Mahomes stance. I would never bet on Mahomes because they're always winning. To me, you bet on the guy who's constantly either coming from behind or has a defense. Like Russell Wilson, to me, is a perfect candidate for this. They can't stop anybody. So he's going to be throwing the ball like crazy. If the Chiefs are up 34-7 on some team, he's not going to be throwing the ball at that point. And with their offensive line, I think the Chiefs are going to be more apt to just go, you know what, F it. 3rd and 2, here comes power. Stop us. And I think that plays into this question quite a bit. Edwards-Helaire, I think 2 things are going to happen. A, I think he's going to get a lot more rushing yards just because he's going to have a much better line. 2, I think you are going to see the screen game back in full force. They are going to use this line, this young, athletic front, to get out in space. And Edwards-Helaire, one of the biggest reasons they drafted him is how good his hands are. So I'm in on that. I say fact. I think he's going to have a very nice year.
Yeah, I'm going to go fact as well. They just had an article. Adam Teicher over at ESPN.com does a great job over there for many years covering the Chiefs. And Adam said that they're looking to get Clyde a little bit more involved in the passing game this year. There's some quotes in there from Mahomes talking about how he was young, he's a rookie. It was just they needed time for him just to focus on the running game and learn the blocking schemes and speed and all that stuff. And that he had started to come along towards the end of the year. Of course, then he had the injury. You're right. 17-game season. He had, I believe, 1,300 all-purpose yards last year. Yep. I think he had like 800 rushing yards. So I agree with you. I think he gets over 1,000 rushing yards behind this line. And the fact of the matter is, teams think they have the playbook on how to beat the Chiefs now, right? Their whole offensive line has to be hurt, and you got to be able to get pressure on Mahomes with 4. You know that what the Chiefs have been focusing on this offseason is we need to be able to run the ball when teams are playing 2 high safeties and they're playing a shell, and we need to take what they give us on offense. That means running the ball and Mahomes dumping it off short, taking those 7-8 yard gains.
The biggest failure of the Chiefs the last 2 years, I include the Super Bowl year in this, they've not been able to run the ball when they should be able to. That is easily their biggest problem. And it was a problem even when they won Super Bowl. I mean, I was actually rewatching the Chiefs-Texans game a couple of days ago, mostly because it was like 11 at night and I had nothing else to do. And it's a fun game. Okay. If you cut out the first 20 minutes. In the process of them scoring 28 straight points in the second quarter, they flash a graphic. And I can't remember what the score was. The Chiefs were still down, but at that point, we're well on their way to coming back. The Chiefs had rushed for 1 yard. 1 yard. They didn't even try to run the ball. They were like, hell with it. We're throwing it every down, right? And I believe that caught up to them a little. Now, look, last year in the Super Bowl, they weren't going to run. They had no line. But Tampa Bay just was able to tee off. The Chiefs had no answer for it. And we can get into a lot of different things. I think Andy should have changed the way they called that game. But regardless, if they can, when teams are playing 2 high safety, you have to run the ball against that. I'm not saying you have to like always call a run, but when you do, you have to be able to have success against that front. Have to. And the Chiefs have not been able to. If Kansas City can start to have success running against 2 high safeties, you put teams in a brutal spot. They either need to sit back and just get 1,000 paper cuts to death, or they've got to bring a safety up. And if you know anything about people in the NFL, eventually what's going to happen is a coordinator on the sideline is going to get sick and tired of giving up 6 yards a carry, and they're going to say, you know what? We're bringing the safety up. We're going to take our chances, and that's when you hit Hardman or Hill for a bomb down the field. And so I think for the Chiefs, that has to be – don't forget, this offense, since Mahomes has been here, it looked the best the year they went to the AFC Championship game and lost, and they had Kareem Hunt. And once Hunt left, they've still been a great offense. But that year, 2018, the first 10 games or so, they were ridiculous. Nobody could stop them, and it was because they could just run the ball. They put teams in ridiculously bad spots. So I think that's going to be huge for them this season.
Yeah, and they did run the ball, and they did dump the ball off to Kareem Hunt, and Kareem Hunt would do ridiculous things because he'd have all this space to work when he got the ball in the middle of the field. And I think that's what we're going to see from Clyde Edwards-Helaire this year. That's why everybody keeps offering me crappy fantasy football trades for him on my fantasy teams, and I tell him to go take a hike. Because between the fact that I know that they got to run the ball more and that I know that they have a line that when they get down into the red zone and on the goal line, they might actually be able to run the ball in for a touchdown. Yes. I think he could be a huge fantasy asset if you can get your hands on him. All right, next one. Let's go over to the defense now. And you talked about this player, Chris Jones, and I am gonna make a bet on him to win Defensive Player of the Year because the odds are great. You should bet at WinBet if you can. Betting partner of our great company. Chris Jones, fact or fiction, will have 10 plus sacks at defensive end. Now he hasn't had double-digit sacks since 2018, I believe. The year he had like 15 and a half sacks, something like that.
Ridiculous. It was. I think you're right. I'm looking it up right now, but I believe it was 2018.
I think he said it's like 9, 8.5.
So last year he had 7.5. The year before he had 9. Here's what's amazing. He was not a Pro Bowler when he had 15.5 sacks in 2018.
As a defensive tackle. As a
D tackle, not only not an all pro, not a Pro Bowler. It's impossible.
It's ridiculous.
It's like not letting Aaron Donald make a Pro Bowl. Anyway, I'm in as a fact on this so hard. I think I actually hurt myself. Look, I wouldn't be shocked if he has a year where he has like 17 sacks. I honestly believe that. A few reasons. One, him kicking outside. Look, most tackles, you're not ready for a guy who's 290 to 300 pounds. Like tackles are used to guys with 250, 260. Jones has the athleticism of a normal defensive end, but at like 35 pounds greater. That is an insane combination. Number two, because they have Jerron Reed, who's so good inside and is a pass rusher inside, and you have Clark, and I get it. Look, Frank Clark has not been the player the Chiefs were hoping he would be in the regular season. The playoffs, he's been Lawrence Taylor. But in the regular season, he's been good, not great. But when you have all that, it becomes very, very, very hard to just double Jones all the time. You know, you really don't want pressure to come from the inside. And by the way, Jones has been doubled his whole career, and it hasn't stopped him yet. He's killed double teams. And now instead of facing a center and a guard or a guard tackle, he's going to get like a tackle on a tight end or a tackle on a running back. I look forward to the 1 or 2 times this year when a team blows a protection and he's one-on-one with a running back. That's what happen. I live for. Like every once in a while, you'll get that with a D end. I want to see Melvin Gordon one-on-one on the edge with Chris Jones. I'm sure Chris Jones also wants to see that. But I'm in fact all the way.
Yeah, it's a shame Philip Lindsay's gone from Denver. I would have liked to have seen him get stuck in the backfield with Chris Jones
built to take that block.
No, he certainly wasn't. I'm with you, man. Fact all the way. He's been close. Maybe I could have upped it. Maybe I could have done 12 or 13 here to make this one a little more interesting. Yeah, I just think, and the way that he's playing out there, at least in the preseason, and I know it's preseason, but you're right. It's going to cause a lot of problems for teams. And they're just, the other thing too, is when he's in the middle, that's one thing, he's trying to collapse the pocket. Now, if you're a quarterback, you won't want to scramble to that side. Whatever side he's on, you don't want to go over there because you know he's going to be able to get loose. And so it just helps everything that the Chiefs are going to do on defense. And I think teams are going to, like the addition of Mike Hughes, getting DeAndre Baker back, like I think teams are going to have to hold on to the ball a little bit longer. I'm excited about the defense this year and their ability to create pressure. And that could be the difference for them in winning a Super Bowl. All right, let's talk about offense. Let's go back to the offense. Let's talk about our guy. He's on the magazine cover over my right shoulder here.
You got the KCI airport, right?
I did. Yeah. You were there. Yeah. Great cover. Patrick Mahomes. Will he win his second MVP award this year? Fact or fiction?
Fact. If I had to bet on one guy, it would be him, because I think they're going to be the best team in football. And I think, now we'll get some of that later, but he was right in the running last year. He won it in 2018. If he didn't get hurt in 2019, he would have had a pretty good shot of winning it that season as well. Who are you taking? Like I guess ultimately this doesn't come down to whether or not you're like, oh, he's definitely going to win, but it comes down to who do you think has the best shot? It's very hard to win back-to-back MVP awards. Like it's just, listen, let's be real. It's an award voted by the media. There's sometimes narratives and storylines that go with it. I think Rodgers would have to do something historic to win that again. And I think the Packers are in worse shape because they lose Bakhtiari the first 6 weeks. They're all pro left tackle. Corey Linsley, they're all pro center, now plays for the Chargers. That's a problem. That really matters. Like I could see the Packers early in the year having a lot of problems up front. Well, who's not going to have a lot of problems up front? Mahomes, who, if the preseason's any indication, is basically behind like the Great Wall of China, and he's going to have all day to throw the football. Look, I've said this on this podcast before, and I mean this. If that offensive line is as good as it looks, they will have the best offense they've ever had in the history of this franchise. I know people are like, well, who the hell's wide receiver two? I don't care. I don't care. If he has 3 seconds to throw the ball, somebody's going to get open, or he's going to throw him open. It doesn't. Who was the second receiver on the Packers last year?
Right.
It was you and me.
Yeah.
You and me might as well have been the second receiver on that team. They're terrible. Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He had 48 touchdowns and 5 picks. I mean, say whatever you want about McCall Hardman. He's Jerry Rice compared to whoever the hell the Packers are trotting out there last year other than Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
So, look, I think, yes, if you said who's going to win it, I mean, hey, Brady, you got to put him in there. He's got a great cast around him. I know he's 44. He's obviously still winning. Allen is a great player. Mayfield's a guy who's interesting. Like, if you're right and he takes a step up, they're really talented. That's a narrative thing. Like, they won 13 games or something. For me, it's got to be Mahomes. It has to be. I don't know how you could pick against him for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it really is. You're right. It's narrative based a lot of times. And it's like, okay, you get into that LeBron space where it's like, yeah, he's great, but like, look at the shiny new object over here. And I think, and with Rodgers last year, obviously it was, he's mad at the team and Aaron Rodgers' revenge tour. And he did have great stats. I think it becomes a stats game. So the way I look at it is and I'm gonna go with you on this. I'm gonna go fact, because I look around the NFL and I'm like, who can compete with them in stats, especially if the line is that good? Josh Allen, maybe. Lamar Jackson, if he learns to throw the football a little bit better, yeah, he's right in there as a potential MVP candidate because of what he can do with his legs. And they win every game they play, except when they play the Chiefs. And then Aaron Rodgers. And I don't see anybody else making that leap this year from a stats perspective to be able to be that high octane to what they would need to compete with Mahomes. So I'm going to go fact. I think they could have a potentially historically good offense, score a ton of points, and they're pissed off from losing the Super Bowl. So I think we're going to see a more focused team than we saw last year as well. And you got to pay attention to what Patrick Mahomes says. And he got asked one question this offseason: what records are you concerned about breaking? And he said, going 17-0. So that tells you where his head's at.
I heard Nick Wright say this the other day. He was a friend of the Stacking the Box podcast, just a good guy overall. Works over, of course, at Fox Sports, and is a diehard Chiefs fan. And he said I believe it was on Colin Cowherd's show, if they go 5-0, they have a real shot of just running the table. Now, look, I don't think they're going 17-0, but Their first 5 games, as I'm sure most people know who listen to this podcast, you got Cleveland, Baltimore, the Chargers, the Eagles, the Bills. The Eagles are the only team that the Chiefs should win by 30 points over. If they run that table, okay, you start looking at the rest of the schedule. They still have hard games. The next 2 games, in fact, are Washington and Tennessee, and then they play Green Bay a little bit later. But, man, there's a lot of Denver twice, the Raiders twice, the Bengals, the Steelers at home, the Giants at home on a Monday night, which is akin to a ritualistic killing. I mean, you go down the list. Like, you start looking at that schedule, you have Dallas at home. There's a lot of games you're like, man, they should win, not only win, but win pretty big. And I think, look, I always find Vegas interesting, right? Because Vegas, I think sometimes people are always like, oh, they're off on this or off on that. The job isn't to be necessarily right. Their job is to draw action on both sides of a number. Week 1 against Cleveland, I know we're going to get in that game all next week. The Chiefs are favored by 6 points. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with gambling, usually the home team kind of gets 3 points automatically. That's a little bit of a home field advantage. And then from there, that is against another very good team. That's a lot of points.
There's a lot in the NFL.
Let's put it this way. If Buffalo's home to Cleveland, Buffalo might be 3.5, 4. 6 is a lot. And I've seen lines, by the way, that are out for week 2. The Chiefs are favorites in Baltimore by a point, but they're a favorite. Like, to be a favorite on the road against another really good team is almost like, that's like Pats level when they had Brady and Belichick all those years, where they were just always the favorite. Kansas City right now is a favorite literally in every game that they have in their schedule. Every single one of them. And so I don't think they go 17-0, but this team is loaded. And if the Chiefs go 16-1 or something like that, or 15-2, Mahomes throws for 5,000 yards, he's going to be the MVP of the league.
Yeah. All right. So that leads us into the last fact or fiction. And this is a kind of a 2-parter. So fact or fiction, the Chiefs will win 15 games. And also, after you tell us if they will or not, tell us your record prediction.
Fact, 15-2. I picked them to go 15-2 when the schedule came out. I stick by. They don't lose games in September, ever. In fact, like, literally, Mahomes has never lost a game in September. Reed hasn't lost a game in September since something like 2017. 2016. They have not lost a game in September since the Obama administration. I mean, they don't lose. So, look, I get it. Their schedule's hard, but if they get through those games, I just reeled off who they're playing the last 10 or so games of the year. Who are you picking to beat them? Like, it's not to say that they're going to win every game. Like, the Raiders came in there and beat the Chiefs last year and then did a victory tour and then lost every game after that. But I look at the Chiefs, and the way I break it down is whenever the Chiefs play a team that they're up for, they beat them. I remember last year when they went into Buffalo for the regular season game, and it was all, hey, Buffalo, here they come. The Chiefs went in there and smacked them all over the field on national television. Even more to the point, when they played Baltimore, and I was guilty of this too. Like, I thought, this is going to be a game where, like, Baltimore's really up for this.
Yeah.
The Chiefs destroyed Baltimore.
Yeah, you picked Baltimore to win that game.
I did. It was the only game all year I picked the Chiefs to lose, and Kansas City just eviscerated Baltimore. So I look at it, and I say, well, yeah. Like, do I think, like, when they play Cleveland, and I'm not giving away a secret, do I think they're going to beat Cleveland? Yeah, I do. They're at home. It's week 1. I get Willie Gay's not going to play. We'll see what's going on. Frank Clark's had that hamstring that's kind of lingered. I don't care. I don't care. Like, I am taking Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes in a sold-out Arrowhead week 1, right? And so I think they lose one game in the division. There's always that game you get tripped up, whether or not it's some game in Vegas, which I don't think it will be, by the way. Or maybe they have that Thursday night game late on the road against the Chargers. Like, maybe that's a game they lose. And then I'll give you the one spot I think is a little bit interesting for them. After they play Buffalo and they finish that 5-game gauntlet, they play Washington on the road and Tennessee on the road. Both games are noon kicks, Central Time. Those are the kinds of games I'm always a little leery of. Those teams are good teams, but like teams the Chiefs should beat. They're not primetime games. They're not standalone late afternoon games. Like, it's one of those things where, like, Washington is going to be unbelievably pumped up for that game. And the Chiefs are just probably going to be like, it's Washington. Like, those are the games that scare you a little bit. So I'll pick them to, like, split those games and maybe lose to the Chargers late in the year. Just, short week, cross country, whatever. But I'll tell you right now, I wouldn't be shocked if they won more. And I don't think they're going to win less unless they get hurt.
I hope you're right. I am going to go fiction on this one. And I'll tell you why. It's not so much that I think the Chiefs are going to get tripped up a bunch of times. I think they're going to lose 2 games just like you do. I think they're going to get tripped up in the division. I think it's going to be the Chargers that are going to snake bite them this year. And I think they're going to lose a game to somebody else. But because of the way their schedule shakes out, because of the tiebreakers I think that they're going to have over all the potential playoff teams, as you say, getting up for all those games, I think by the time they get to that last week of the season,
they just lay down.
They're laying down. I think everybody's going to be sitting. Everyone's going to be getting healthy. Chiefs are going to lose that game. Hell, man, they might activate Shane Buechele from the practice squad and not even put Henny in there because I think it's going to be locked up. I think they'll have the 1 seed locked up, and so I think they'll end up losing 3 games. But I think they'll be as good as you think.
I'll add this quickly. This I believe, and after all the consternation about the job Brett Veach was doing and everything else in March and in April, and what are we going to do? I think this is the deepest team they've ever had. The deepest. I honestly think that Week 18 game at Denver, I think they could go in there and play their second stringers and beat Denver. I really do. Like if Denver plays their starters, I think the Chiefs would have a legitimate shot to win the game. I mean, look, if they're playing all their backup offensive linemen and all their back, but if the Chiefs rested just like the star players, like the top 10 guys, I'm not saying I'd pick the Chiefs to win, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if Kansas City went in there and won the game. I mean, I saw Jeff Allen, who's been a friend of the podcast, who's come on for, former guard. He tweeted out that the Chiefs backups could win the NFC East. And I thought about it and was like, I don't think they actually could. I'm guessing he probably doesn't either. I'm guessing they could win like 6 or 7 games and like be in the, which is bonkers.
They're that good.
But when you watch the preseason and they brought in their backups, they were just smoking teams. Like it was like, they were beating the Viking starters with their backups at one point in the game. They're just 3 and outing them. And it says quite a bit.
Yeah, it does. They are deep. It's going to be an exciting season. So let's put a capstone on this. Super Bowl or bust. Do the Chiefs make it? And do they win it?
Believe it or not, despite all I said about them being great in 15-2, I actually thought about this because I'm a man of history. I love the history of a lot of things. It's just specifically, if I could speak, specifically the NFL. Here are the teams that have gone to 3 straight Super Bowls. Not won 3 straight, because nobody's ever won 3 straight Super Bowls, but just appeared in them. 71 through 73, the Miami Dolphins. Okay, they won 2 of them. 90 through 93, the Buffalo Bills. Famously lost all 4 of them. Okay, and then the New England Patriots from 2016 to 2018. And they won 2 of them. That's it. It's the entire list. Apparently, the AFC East has a monopoly. Okay. It's very hard. You were playing a lot of extra games, more wear and tear on the body. You'll lose players in free agency, of course, now in these days and times with the cap and whatnot. But I think they're going back. I look at them. I think they're the deepest team they've ever had. And there are potential pitfalls. Okay. If Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce get hurt, the Chiefs have a big problem because they don't have a bunch of great weapons behind them. However, with all due respect to Sammy Watkins, I would argue that's kind of been the case the last handful of years. Like, he's hurt all the time.
Right.
So
it's not like he was Jerry Rice out there.
Yeah. Like everybody's talking about this. He didn't even play till they got to the Super Bowl last year. I mean, they were killing Buffalo and Cleveland in the playoffs without any help from Watkins. Watkins was huge in the Super Bowl year, but and I would argue, obviously, he was not the reason that they lost in the Super Bowl. I mean, they weren't, he was not much of a factor. So, look, I always look at it this way. Who would I pick to go into Arrowhead and beat them in a playoff game? Nobody. I think the Bills are the biggest threat to them, and the Chiefs boat raced Buffalo twice. Boat raced them. And the Chiefs gifted them a touchdown in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Made no difference.
Were they down 10-0?
They were down 9-0.
9-0, yeah.
Yeah, you missed extra. The game was over by halftime. That game was, by the time the Chiefs were up 21-9, this game's done. They can't stop him. Allen looked like he had no idea how to figure out Spagnuolo's defense, which, by the way, is a big subplot to the season. Like, Allen better figure it out because in both games, he did nothing against Kansas City. Nothing. They took Diggs out of the game. They made him win everywhere else, and they couldn't do it. Look, Baltimore, to me, you got to prove it. Beat them once. Every time Chiefs play Baltimore, they smash them. And then Cleveland has a lot of talent. I just don't trust Mayfield, man. In the end, like, I just look at it and go, is he going to really go in there and beat Mahomes? Heads up. I don't think so. I don't think anybody else can. I'll give you the one thing. Tennessee's interesting from this aspect. If they have Julio Jones and A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry on the field at the same time and healthy in the playoffs, that team is the kind of team that if you catch them on the wrong day, you could lose like 42-38 to them. But again, would I pick them to beat Kansas City? No, because I think the Chiefs would score 50. Like, I just think they're so loaded, dude. I get it, injuries, whatever, but that's true of any team. If they're healthy, and not just, and by the way, I think even if they go on the road in the playoffs, they'd beat any of these teams. I really do. Like, if they had to go to Buffalo, like, it's harder, but would I still pick them? Yeah, I would. Like, I would. I absolutely would. So yes, I think they will go back to the Super Bowl for what is a third straight year. Imagine saying that only a couple of years ago with this franchise.
Well, you forgot the second half of the question. Do they win it?
Yes. I think Tampa's the only team I think that can beat them. I'm not kidding. If they get anybody else in the NFC, I think they'll absolutely destroy them because Seattle has no secondary. The Rams are interesting. But I feel like the Rams are just a lesser version of the Chiefs. Like Stafford's fine, but he's not Mahomes. Kupp and Woods are fine. They're not Kelsey and Hill. The Niners are good. I just like we've sung this song. Like, is Garoppolo going to beat him in a Super Bowl? I don't think so.
I don't think he'll be starting by the end of the season. I think
maybe
Trey Lance
not, right?
will be in
And then
there.
I'm not
They'll be figuring that out,
right?
You know?
And I'm not taking a rookie. New Orleans is not what it once was. Green Bay to me, I mentioned the loss in the offensive line. They might get Bakhtiari back, but it's like you take Adams away, and that passing game is not as strong. Now Rodgers is great, but I would take the Chiefs to win the game. So I think Tampa, if they play Tampa again, and they're both healthy, that's an unbelievable game. That's like how many Hall of Famers would be in that game? Like 10? It'd be unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think they're the best team. And ultimately, man, well, I think Tampa's as good as them. I would take the Chiefs strictly based off of Mahomes. If they can block for him, it's a wrap.
Yeah. I don't need to make this long. Yes, I think the Chiefs are going back to the Super Bowl. Mahomes is just different, man. Like, he's a different cat. He's as special as Tom Brady in different ways, obviously, but he's that kind of special, a LeBron James, a Steph Curry kind of player. I think the Chiefs are the closest thing to a football team version of what the Golden State Warriors were a couple of years ago with Clay and Steph and Draymond and those guys. Like, just so much more talented than every other team and even they lost to a team that wasn't as talented than them. And it took a historical finals comeback. And I'm not just saying that to troll our producer Hunter, who is a big Golden State fan. They got all the chips. I know he's not worried about that one, but that's what I think about this team. And when I look at the AFC, there's just nobody close. And, we saw that once before with the New England Patriots and with Randy Moss, and they went all the way to the Super Bowl and they lost to a Giants team with a tough defense. But I think they're going back because I don't think anybody could stop them in the AFC. Boy, it's so hard to win Super Bowls, but if they won last year, even with this team, I would be like, there's just no way. They're not going to win 3 in a row. To keep the focus, but because they lost last year, because they got their asses kicked last year in the Super Bowl and got humiliated.
Yep.
I just think that's the guys they have on this team. Andy Reid, if they stay healthy, I think even if they run into Tampa Bay, I think they're going to be able to beat them. And I think it's going to be the first time in a Super Bowl Mahomes is Mahomes is Mahomes in a Super Bowl. I know they've got a good defense in Tampa, but I think it's going to be Green Bay. I think it's going to be Green Bay, Kansas City, though.
If the Chiefs win the Super Bowl this year, are they a dynasty?
Yeah, I think you have to say so. I generally tend to say, like, you've got to get 3 championships to be considered a dynasty, in a certain amount of time, but they've dominated. You've got to go back to even Alex Smith and them being a playoff team, dominating the AFC West, then progressing with Mahomes, winning the Super Bowl. Yeah, if they get a second Super Bowl in 3 years, that's so friggin' hard to do. And they'll be right back in the playoff mix the next year. It's the era of Mahomes and the Chiefs right now. That's what we're in.
I'll close my portion with this. I do think that you could have that conversation. I don't know where I fall on that, actually. I just kind of thought of it as we were talking, but your point is very apt. They are what New England was for the last 20 years. Where if you're in the AFC, you can look at them and just go, we got to beat them. And some years you will. Some years you will. As great as New England was, they go to the Super Bowl every year, but the average is going about once every 3 years. Okay. That team, you knew, as the late, great Therese Paler used to say, you got to go where the phones don't work. And you've got to find a way to beat that team. And I think, look, let's face it. The Chiefs ran into Brady 2 of the last 3 years. I mean, and now look, if if he's not offside, they win that game, okay? And if the offensive line's healthy, but he was offside, and the offensive line wasn't healthy. The Pats for 20 years were Peyton Manning's roadblock. They were Ben Roethlisberger's roadblock. At the end, they were Kansas City's roadblock. Kansas City is now that team where if you're Buffalo, Baltimore, Cleveland, whoever, you are looking at Arrowhead Stadium and you're looking at the Chiefs and saying, how do we beat them? And that's a very good position to be in.
Amen to that. It's going to be a hell of a season. We've been here for a while, so we got to get going. But right before we go, we have a reader review. You guys know the drill. You head over to our Apple Podcast page. You leave us a 5-star review. You leave us a written review with a question. We're going to read it on the podcast. That's as true as today as ever. So, by the way, Verderam, did you get your Count Chocula yet?
I'm literally going to get it tonight.
I've been at Walmart. They don't have it, but somebody tipped me off that it's at Target. So I'm gonna make that trip.
And I'll tell you right now, if I find it and there's 10 boxes of it, I'm buying 10 boxes of it.
I'm doing the same thing. Yeah. I'm stocking up.
And I'm going to send a picture to General Mills. Be, hey, you think you're going to keep it from me in June? We'll see who's going to win the Battle of Wills.
I love it. It's about that time. So this review is more related to the GOAT of cereals, which is I mentioned in a podcast, I think you weren't here, but that I wanted to try there's all these versions of CT Crunch.
Yeah.
And there's the CT Crunch churros, which I mean, if you've ever had a churro, it's heaven. This one comes from Joe On It 55 from the 19th of August. Thank you, Joe, for your review. He says, I love your show. My wife tried CT churros and she said it was a 2 due to all of the cinnamon washing off. So if you haven't listened to our cereal reviews before, we have a 0 to 5 scale. It's the CT Crunch scale. So if you get 5 CT Crunches, that would mean you're in an absolutely incredible cereal. So Joe's wife given the CT its own rating system, CT Crunch churros, only 2 CT Crunches. What does this shake your faith a little bit, Verderam? Or are you still going to check out a box at some point?
I'll still check out a box. But that being said, look, first of all, kudos to Joe for the review. Kudos to Joe's wife for testing the cereal and giving her grade. Okay?
And the scale. Yeah, I love it.
By the way, I don't want to see anybody commenting like, hey, this cereal is a 6. There is no 6. Okay, because that's the way there is 1 6, and it's Cinnamon Toast Crunch, the bottom of the bag. Right. It's the only 6. Right. That's like when you have that, you call in sick that day. Yep. And you just say, this is my day, boys. This is it. Okay. And everybody at work understands if they're real. But that said, I'd still try it. Like I love Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So that being said, I appreciate the review. And now I go in with a little bit of skepticism. And I'm not like real high and excited about this. And then all of a sudden it's, oh wow, I have a bowl of sugar milk.
You have even expectations. I think it's probably a texture thing, right? I mean, if they're using roughly the same dust, but a different, a churro-shaped piece of cereal, obviously it's going to maybe have a little bit of harder time sticking to the cereal than the standard CT Crunch. So, but when I go to get my Count Chocula, I think it's time. I'll just snag a box, family size, of course. And you got to make sure you give it the full full review.
Like anyone else in the family's eating it.
That's right. Well, there's just 2 of us in our family, and my wife doesn't eat the cereal, so you know where all that's going.
It's like when I go to get sushi, and I order it, and I get there, and they give me like 2 forks. I'm like, yeah, okay. There you go. You take it back. Right? So and I am very excited about that. I love that the cereal thing has become such a part of the podcast, and we now get tweets from people.
Yes.
And the Count Chocula one, and forgive me, the person who tweeted it, I know they follow us, and I interact with them a lot on Twitter. Not only did they tweet to us like, hey, Count Chocula's there, they took a picture.
Yes.
Like they took as if we weren't going to believe them. They're like, hey, that's great.
Verifiable evidence. Yeah.
Like that is
you guys are the
level
best.
Type stuff. So I love it. I appreciate it. Keep it coming. It's great. And One of these days, we got to get sponsored by one of these cereals.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it's a tragedy that we haven't been yet.
It really is. We'll get on the phone with General Mills. I talked to the sales team. All right, y'all, we're going to get out of here. Hey, look, we got one more week. One more week. We are what? We're 7 days away from NFL football.
10 days from the Chiefs.
And 10 days from the Chiefs. It's going to be the late kick on Sunday with the Browns. So you'll be able to really you can enjoy all the 1 o'clock games and then gear up for the Chiefs and the Browns. I'm excited. It's finally here. We'll be back next week. Sterling and Matt Connor will be there early in the week, and we will be back. We're still figuring out the schedule, so we'll tip you off on this. We may not be at our regular Thursday time slot because there's a game, and so you may see us on Sunday evening or on Monday. We're going to figure that out. We're still setting the schedule, so keep an eye on Twitter for that. I may even drop a note in the podcast feed. But you guys are the best. Our numbers are going through the roof, by the way, because of you. We just had the biggest month we've ever had in the history of the podcast in August. Beautiful. That's absolutely incredible. There's not even football being played. It's higher than draft month. So you guys keep it coming. Keep those reviews coming. We appreciate your support. For Matt Verderam, my name is Patrick Allen. We see you on YouTube now. We'll see you in the comments there, and maybe a live show coming at you next week. As always, go Chiefs.